So I'm going to talk about orthopedic skills simulation and sort of the simulator that we've developed and the company that we've developed around this. Just to start, I'm a PhD candidate. This simulator was something I developed as my master's project when I got my master's in biomedical engineering. And then we got a patent with this technology and started a small company with two of my, well, actually three people, one surgeon that is on our team, but then two other people in the lab. Um, so, sorry, one second. So in orthopedics, you might be kind of surprised to know there's really no good training solution other than what is commonly called the see one, do one, teach one method. So it's sort of a like mentorship model where residents will watch surgeons and they'll oftentimes have their first actual experience with a lot of, like skills on live patients. And I'm sorry for this picture if it's a little bit gory, but I really want to drive home the point that if you have a fracture or something and you have to have some pins or something put in place, you could possibly be having somebody try to do this that's never actually done it before. And it's important because anecdotally, if you see on the left here, this is a hip surgery. I heard a story of one resident that you see this screw that goes all the way up into the hip. So this would be a broken hip, and this is a plate that they put on. And this screw is a 10 millimeter diameter screw, and they have to ream out, the bone before they put the screw in. And there was a resident that didn't know that the drill will kind of want to pull itself forward, and they ended up reaming a 10 millimeter hole all the way through the joint on this person that had already fallen and broken their hip. So then they had to go get a full total hip replacement, and that just really compounds the injuries that they're already sustained through a hip fracture. So it's important that residents they achieve the skills that are at least necessary before they start operating on patients. The other problem is there's high costs. Orthopedic lawsuits are currently 20% in some studies that I found of all malpractice litigation. And I believe a big part of that is due to a lack of skills training or proper skills training. And the last thing is that learning skills on the job on live patients in a high stakes situation is not really a conducive learning environment. Learning, you make mistakes when you learn. That's part of the learning process. And on a patient, you're really not able to make these mistakes. So the solution really is just, especially in skills training, is to increase exposure and experience. And that is through deliberate practice and repetition. So for like swinging a bat or a golf club, you've just got to keep, go to the driving range and just keep practicing until it becomes second nature, and then you can focus on other aspects of the surgery more effectively as well, and you'll have more confidence. Additionally, like while you're learning, it's really important to have live feedback. Like if for instance you're drilling, the surgeon should say like, oh, you need to raise or drop your hand as you're drilling this. But also you want to have cumulative feedback. So after the surgery, you want to be able to see, what decisions you made, when and where, and how they affected your surgery. Um, Again, like I said, you want to learn in a low stress environment. And I'm saying all this because simulation can capture all of the elements that I've discussed here. And really simulation for medical training is a very strong potential avenue for training orthopedic skills. Currently, though, there aren't a lot of good solutions on the market for orthopedic skills training. This is actually from the University of Iowa's orthopedics website here on the left. And this is for something called wire navigation. And they're using, a DeWalt drill, a PVC pipe, and some pool foam. And this is supposed to represent a bone and soft tissue, and you drill into it. It's good because it teaches a resident, how to use a drill, and like that the drill will kind of want to pull itself forward if the screw is threaded, things like that. But it's bad because it doesn't actually give you like any feedback or like track your performance to show improvement. On the flip side, there are these like really high-tech simulators that we see a lot now. So like full VR systems where you have these wands that you use. And this is good for like learning the steps of a procedure, and it's probably good for if you're like nervous, you know, you kind of can simulate being in the operating room. However, you know, there's no actual force feedback. There's you're not going to learn how bones behave and how to use surgical tools. Um, so we're kind of straddling the middle. So we take physical models and then we attach these sensors. So we're tracking like the tool and the model, and then we can generate mock X-rays. Um, and this is so we're also kind of in the middle price range too, because the high-tech simulators are really expensive, low-tech are pretty cheap. So we also straddle the middle there. Using this, so here we can see these are not linked up, but here's a video of a resident using the simulator, and then on the right is sort of the virtual x-rays that the resident will use to guide their surgery. And then you can see on the bottom, this is sort of what's going on behind the scenes. So this is live tracking their performance as they're doing the surgery. And so because we can track the tool, the bones, and where the tools touch the bones and everything in real time, we can get a lot of data, which is really cool because then we can do like what I was saying before, summative feedback at the end. And so just really quick, I just want to show this is the bone. If you look from the side, and the tool that we were just looking at, it interacts with the bone. And so you can see an expert will place their tool on one point and do the entire surgery, whereas a novice will put their tool all over. And actually this right here, you have a lot of ligaments and everything that attach to the bone right here. So this would be a really bad spot to put your tool. And so we, you know, this is something that we haven't really been able to even analyze before we had a tool like this. We're moving on and trying to come up with some additional simulator platforms, or not trying to. So we've developed one for a pediatric, and this is obviously very prototypey still, pediatric fracture reduction. So children with a elbow fracture. And this is another company that we're partnered with that they do the pinning, and which is where you put the wires into a fracture to like hold it in place once you've fixed it. This is sort of this is a mock-up of the system. So you'll both reduce the fracture, put the bones back together, and that's what these sensors are, and then also drive the wire in to hold the fracture. And so we just got a grant. We got a grant to pretty much do exactly this. Just quickly, we're still kind of new in the startup phase. So we're looking at different revenue platforms. I can answer more questions about this later. But essentially there's a few different routes that we'd like to go. Really looking at a subscription package, I think, is the best route for us. And the more advanced simulator, it's also trained as sort of a or we're aiming it to be a skills maintenance platform. So it will be more than just for residents in training, but also orthopedic surgeons in practice. So far, we've got a patent submitted on the technology. We won the $40,000 engineering innovation fund. That was to combine the two simulators that I just talked about. And recently we got a contract with the College of Nursing Simulation Center to develop a part for one of their simulators that just when I was talking to them, they saw the technology I was using and kind of wanted to replace a part with something that we developed. And that's all I have.
Excellent. Any questions?
Thanks for the presentation, Marcus. I'm just curious, what's your plan for reaching customers outside of the ones that you've already secured with like the College of Nursing? Do you have a strategy for that yet?
Yeah. So in like the customer discovery phase in this class that I'm taking, pretty much everybody that I've talked to that has gone out and found a simulator and brought it back in to be used, they saw them at conferences. So the biggest thing for us is to get out to conferences. And we're already, so ISS is the wire navigation, like the other company, which is another Iowa small startup. And they're also in my lab, and some of the co-founders of my company are in that. So we're kind of really closely tied to them. And we go to these training conferences where I think they'll have like a couple hundred residents and it's twice a year. And so we had been going for research, but also bringing the simulators and kind of getting recognition. And so we're gonna, once the fracture reduction simulator, which is one I just presented, is a little bit farther along, we're also gonna bring that out for training, and that'll get exposure from literally all the orthopedic residents, at least at some point in their career.
Hey, Marcus, this is David. Could you talk to us about your target market and your go-to-market strategy?
Yeah. Do you want me to bring my slide back up?
Sure.
Or share? All right. So our target market, there's kind of depending on what simulation. Oh, are you seeing my screen?
Yep.
Okay. So it depends on what simulation platform we end up really selling. The simulation platforms like these ones, which are geared towards residents and training, they are a little bit easier, and they distill the skill down a little bit more. So for certain simulator packages or like simulations, we would target the residents or just, surgeons in training. And that sort of is where we've been doing our research. So this is it all sort of stemmed from research funding. So we've spent basically thus far, most of our time working with training new residents and getting, data showing that we can train residents. So I think what we'd do is continue doing that and then start doing the conferences, and then from the conferences we would hopefully start doing a subscription package where we would either subscription or just like we would sort of work with a hospital where they would just hire us to come out and bring the simulators with us, and we'd come out and run them. At least in the beginning, that's kind of what's been working for us with the other company. And then as we kind of develop more, we're thinking of just outright selling simulators, and that's always also a possibility, but it really makes a lot of sense right now just to bring everything. We do the training, we bring the simulators, we show up, and we have all the consumables, and that at least that's the plan that we're going with.
Sure. And what would you say is your number one challenge still with your current product?
Just that we're still early in the process, I would say. It's I don't know, for lack of a better term, it's a little prototypey still. So just development. I think the technology is there, the data is there. Like we do see some pretty significant differences between novices and expert surgeons. We don't really quite have a curriculum yet for the fracture reduction simulator, training. Right now it's kind of, you hop on and we give you feedback as you're going. Whereas with the wire navigation simulator, which is our, kind of partner company, that's, probably it's been about 10 years as a research project all the way up to here. So that has like a full curriculum, and they've hired a professional designer. So I think just for us right now, it's just that we're still kind of early in the game with the project and technology.
Sure. Is this going to be going international soon, or what are your thoughts?
That is actually a really good point, because there are a lot of countries where you can't use cadavers at all. And I'd say other than, other simulations, cadavers are kind of the gold standard. Although they are actually really not used as often as you'd probably hope, especially in smaller schools. But yeah, so we were really thinking of like Brazil are one of those countries that you can't have cadavers. There's a lot of countries in the Middle East. So we've been talking about that and getting sort of patents internationally. But again, it's still pretty early for us to be thinking about that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Marcus, I had a question. So I know that there's a big push right now for kind of virtual training for surgery and other things like that. what are the big differences between what you're offering and what other competitors, solutions are out there on the market?
Mhm. I think like right now the biggest kind of hot topic is all complete virtual reality, and even some of the surgeons that we work with, they're interested in it because it does have a lot. It's flashy and it does seem like it has a lot of potential advantages in that everyone can sort of have like VR goggles that they put in their backpack and take home with them, and then they'd be able to like learn in the comfort of their home how to do these surgeries. And I like there are a lot of really good applications. And so I guess right now that is like the high tech solution. There's that, and the low tech solution are there's this company that they're called Sawbones, and they just make sort of plastic bones that people will like literally clamp in a vise and drill into. So it's kind of like that PVC setup that I showed you. Um, so those are the companies in the market, and the Sawbones, they're pretty good for like learning like if I use this drill, how does it react. And then the VR goggles are good for just like learning the steps of the procedure, but there's no really way to connect the two. Like so like we're different in that you can learn your tactile skills and your haptic feedback, but then you also get this like tracking involved, and you have the bone. Because we're tracking it, it can be covered in soft tissue, which is what orthopedic residents have to do when they're operating. You don't get just a bone that you can look all around. So it's something I didn't really talk about, but a big part of orthopedics is learning how do I take these x-ray images, and you have to take from different views, like orthogonal views, and then from these, how do I sort of interpret what's going on three-dimensionally inside of the bone, and like how do I manipulate my hand only using these x-rays. So because we can like recreate that too, I think that really sets us apart. And I think too, just in orthopedic skills, there really just aren't many other simulation companies yet that have really gotten into this area. So
Does it, my second question is, does it simulate that same feel? Like, is that one of the big differences between something that would be more virtual, right?
yep.
Is that pressure, texture, tactile element of this?
Yeah. That was a big part of what we were going for, and especially now with the like as we're learning and improving on the simulator where we're combining the two. That's really something we're focusing on a lot. And that is actually, especially for fracture reduction, that's actually a pretty good point. When you have a cadaver, for instance, you can practice, fracture reduction on a cadaver, but the like rigor mortis is set in and everything, so it's like really stiff. And so with our simulators, I do really focus on the actual feel, and working with the surgeons helps that a lot. So we use like rubber bands to tension and recreate muscle forces, and silicone to sort of be like the soft tissue. And so getting like the correct like tension forces on the rubber bands and everything. So like when you have a fracture too for the elbow, which I didn't really talk about, your muscle will like contract, and that causes a displacing force that will like pull your fracture sort of, out of alignment. And so we've recreated that as well. And so it's something you have to like pull it back against, because kind of like you said, it is like the feel of it and how it responds to like how you like manipulate it is really an important part of it. And I personally, actually, I haven't worked with a cadaver or done an actual reduction myself, so that's always kind of interesting, because that we just have to go by the word of the surgeons and the residents that we work with. But yeah, that's a big thing that we focus on.
Hey, Marcus. Really interesting project here. And to that point, though, when you said that sometimes you're getting surgery done by someone who's never done whatever before, like that blew my mind. So why isn't this out there faster? And I'm sure you've considered a strategic partner perhaps in the insurance companies, because if this is resulting in like lots of claims, for E&O insurance things, they might be someone to talk to as far as funding and really pushing this through out now. Because that's crazy. You would expect your doctors and surgeons to be trained, right? But I don't know. I'm still processing that. But thank you for this. And sorry, that's my.
Yeah, it is. It was really surprising to me too to learn that, and a little bit scary because, like, honestly, some of the people that we try to train on the simulator, there is a pretty big difference in skill. And there are certain, like, the barrier to admission to become an orthopedic resident is like, how much you know and how well you can take a test, and it has nothing to do with your hand-eye coordination or like how good you are with your hands. And I think it's sort of just, this is the way it's always been, and so some institutions are a little bit resistant to change. And I think that orthopedics is coming around, but until they see like the data that, like if the research showing that we can improve training, I think they're going to be really resistant. And so, yeah.
Well, but how much of that can be driven by, normal people, the people getting the surgeries being like, hold on a second, like, hey, I'm not saying you should cancel the institutions, but like, have you thought about canceling the institutions like that? Is that allowed?
Any other questions?
Yes, I do have one more. So you talked about the subscription-based model that, I guess it sounded like you'd have people come out and do kind of help with it as a resident. So you're saying individuals could sign up and then you'd have teams of people and teams of models that would go out and schedule an appointment, or can I get this shipped to me and do this on my own time? It was unclear on how that process worked.
Yep. My apologies. So the way that we would do it is we'd say like the institution would pay for it, but we'd say like however many residents would cost this much per resident. I was kind of thinking, so because it does require more resources, we'll have to bring more simulators or maybe even more people to do the training. So let's say if there were like 8 residents that wanted to come out, then we'd charge like $1,000 per resident, and that would probably be maybe plus some travel depending on how far. And then so we would go out and we'd bring the simulators with us. And typically the orthopedics training programs will have like a simulation coordinator that will set things up like that. And so we just work through them to sort of set up, like for how many people they want to have training. And so I guess by subscription, I just meant it would be, hopefully we'd have like a recurring subscription, because once you're sort of in a process and once they get a system established, a lot of these institutions will do just like a week or a month long like training. And so we would go back every year, and just depending on how many residents we're training, we would charge appropriately. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, it just, on the slide, it was confusing to me because it kind of said residents and there was a dollar amount, like $1 million in revenue from that. And then schools or, training facilities. And so it's like, I just didn't understand the flow of revenue. It's like, if the school's paying for it, then the resident isn't. And if the resident can independently, what's that model and how does that work? So it was just unclear. It made it look as though you add those numbers up and now it's at 7 million a year, when if those overlap, then that's a different story.
Right. They were sort of different options. I didn't explain that well enough. Yep. So those were like different revenue options that we were sort of considering at the moment.
So I have one question before we get to our final one. What's your long-term plan for this? Looking at 5-10 years.
Well, I'm a PhD student, so I'm going to be here for a while. So I'm just going to be continuing to work on this. But ideally, we'd like to get this to at least be some sort of sustaining business where once I graduate, I'd be able to continue with this and develop this into something that could support me and maybe a couple other and a couple other people. Yeah, so I guess right now, at least, the idea is just to keep trying to run with this and see how far we can take it.
Nice. Thought about maybe an exit at some point.
I wouldn't be opposed to it, but I'm still having a lot of fun developing this stuff.
Very nice. I know that's a long way away, but it's always good to think about that sort of stuff as you're moving along. So cool. Any other questions? Not hearing any. I'll go ahead and ask our traditional final question we always have here at 1MC Iowa City. What can we as the community do to help you?
Oh, I think just events like this are great. I think, yeah, I don't really know what else, but just being able to get out and get questions from everybody, and yeah, it's really cool.
Very nice. And then do you want to pop your contact information into the chat, and people can follow up with you if they have other questions or contacts that might be able to help or that sort of thing?
Yeah, and I'd love to talk to anybody if there's any other questions or interest. So here's my email.
Very nice. Cool. All right. Thank you very much. I learned a lot today. That's really neat.